Good morning. How's everyone doing this morning? Good. My name is Brandon. I'm the family minister here at Swiss Cove. If it's your first time, whether in the room or online, we're so glad that you guys are gathered here with us today. I'm not normally the person that's up here preaching. Normally it's Tim or Elliot, but I'm really excited for the opportunity to be able to speak to you guys this morning. But I wanted you guys to be able to have the chance to get to know me a little bit since I'm not up here all that often. So I brought my board games, my favorite board games, just so that you guys can kind of know what I like and what I'm into. And if I pull out a board game that you love, I need you to raise your hand or give me a hoop or a holler out there in the audience. And if you're online, I need you to kind of type up a comment real quick. I need to know who to invite to game nights and who not to invite to game nights because that's really important, and game nights are a center point of my life. So the first game that I've brought is Settlers of Catan. Settlers of Catan is one of the most popular strategy games in America. Ben Wyatt is nationally ranked in this game. It is super fun. I absolutely love it. The game changes every time you play it. There's multiple strategies that you have to know to be able to win. I call it the game that ruins friendships. Because if you've played, you know that you have to be absolutely ruthless to win this game. You have to be able to create allies early on and then just rip the rug right out from under them when it's time for you to win and just cut them down. You can't be a nice person and win this game. It's just the sad truth about it. And so it ruins friendships, but it's one of my all-time favorite games. I've been playing for a long time, and I love it. The next two games I'm going to pull out. I'm pulling out two because they're kind of the same. The first is Pandemic. We're all playing this game right now. We're all terrible at it. And surprisingly, I actually bought this game as a joke. I texted my friends and I was like, hey guys, this game Pandemic just came across my, Amazon, you might want to buy this list. I'm going to buy it and we're going to play it. Turns out it's a super fun game. And the game that I'm pairing with it is Forbidden Desert. These games are cooperative board games. So you and your team of 2 to 6 players are playing against the board. You're all on the same team, which seems really weird in a board game. But the board is constantly moving. It's constantly shifting, constantly changing. They're very difficult games, even in their easiest of game modes. But what makes a game fun other than a challenge? So I've got 3 other games I want to pull out, and these ones I really don't expect you guys to have heard of, but I need to hear it if you have. If you're in the youth group, you guys have played these games. They're some of my favorites. The first is Cove. I see one hand, and it's Max. He's not even raising it, but I'm going to call him out because I know Max has played this game with me multiple times. Cove is very fun. We have One Night Ultimate Werewolf. It is a very fun game. And we have, last but not least, Mark Green, if you guys know him, least favorite game in the world, Secret Hitler. Secret Hitler. Yes, it's exactly as good as it sounds. So these games are under the category of deception board games. I can hear Lori laughing because she knows where this is going. So in these games, there's cards in front of you, and only you know what these cards are. So in Coup, it's a government overthrow game, and you have your government, and the people around you have their government, and you're trying to overthrow them. But you only know, what cards you have in front of you. And One Night Ultimate Werewolf, it's kind of like the card game Mafia that everybody grew up playing. You've got the werewolf team, and you've got the village team, and the tanner that we're not going to talk about. But the werewolf team and the village team are kind of going against each other, but you don't know who's on your team, and you don't know who you're playing against. So you're trying to kind of figure it out and blame people. And then you've got Secret Hitler, where the fascists are trying to get Hitler elected as chancellor. It's the only time I'm going to be allowed to say fascist from stage. And the liberals are trying to stop it. And so, fascists want to get Hitler elected. Liberals are trying to prevent Hitler from being elected. But nobody knows who anybody is. To win these 3 games, you have to be absolutely amazing at lying and manipulating. And I'm really good at these games. And and that's not a good thing, right? I love these games, and if you're a good liar, let's play these games together because it'll make it really fun. We were actually playing just this past Wednesday at youth group, and a kid that I've known for 2 years looked across the table at me and was like, I don't know if I can ever trust you again after playing Secret Hitler with me. And I was like, I promise, this is the only time I lie. The rest of my life, I try to live good. But my poker face when I want it to can be pretty stellar, and it makes these games super fun, and I love these games, and even after I preach this sermon, I'm not going to stop playing them. I might just feel a little guilt. But like I said, being a good liar isn't a good thing. Practice makes perfect, right? And you don't need to hoop and holler or raise your hand in the comments on this one, but I do want to ask you guys a question. And it's, are you a good liar? Like, do you find yourself in situations where you feel the need or want to kind of tell that little sly lie, that fib, and you can get away with it, right? Like in a staff meeting, your boss is like, hey, did you get this project done? And you're like, yeah, totally. And then they walk out of the staff meeting, or now it's a Zoom call, and you're like rushing to get that project done and get it on their desk before they decide to check it. Or kids, we're trying to hang out with our friends and go places, and we ask our parents, hey, can I go here with blah, blah, blah. And we leave out that one kid that we think our parents don't want to hear their name, even though the parents already know this. Guys, stop lying to your parents about who's going. They know they're going. But anyway, the kids try to not tell like this one name and try to leave them out so that they can go do the things they want to do. Or maybe we put a little bit extra on the expense report because, I bought it while I was at work. So it's for work, right? We've all been in this space before. We all know these situations where we tell one lie that leads to another lie that leads to a VeggieTales episode. And we can start the beginning off this Sunday by hitting the big ones, right? We can start off by, saying the ones like where we lie and say, I don't have a drinking problem. I don't struggle with drugs. I'm really good at controlling my anger. I have a great relationship with God. Me and my spouse are on really good terms right now. I don't go to the wrong websites when no one's looking. Think about it. Whether it's something you're struggling with now or maybe it's something you've dealt with way in your past, we all have this lie, this one sin, this lie that we all struggle with. And I want you guys to kind of ask yourself, what's yours? What's yours? Because lying, it comes in many forms. It comes in many different shapes, many different sizes. And we addressed it a little over a month ago in this series on the Sermon on the Mount from Elliot. We heard about it talking of oaths. So let's get a quick refresher on that. Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 36. Elliot talked to us about this. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all. Either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair black or white. Jesus is standing on this mountaintop, and he's covering all kinds of topics that we've been unpacking over the course of this year in the Sermon on the Mount. And he looks at the people in the audience who have been abusing this oath system, and he's like, guys, just please, don't swear. Like your words should be enough to cover what's going on. When we bring our sacrifices to God, when we're talking to the priests and to people about what's happening in our lives, your word should be enough to be trusted. And I look at the world around us that we live in, right? And people's word doesn't mean very much right now, does it? Because we take this virus that we have, this pandemic, the game we're all terrible at, right? And everybody's saying different things. We have medical professionals disagreeing with each other. We have politicians going after each other on each side of the aisle. We have friends on Facebook who are just angry and throwing out all kinds of stuff on different sides of the argument. And now's not the time to be pointing the finger at everyone else being like, yeah, this person is doing that. But it's time to just take a second to understand that our culture is a mistrusting culture. We have friends who are no longer our friends because of mistrust, because of a lie or something we did, or something that they did or they said. This is the world that Jesus was also living in. And I get people all the time who will tell me that Scripture's not relevant anymore because it's 2,000 years old. And I love pointing them back to this little section in Matthew chapters 5 through chapter 7, because let me tell you what, every one of these hits home. This is the world that Jesus lived in. It's the world that we are living in. And Jesus is sitting here talking to these people about the oath system that they have abused. And then he kind of pauses, and he goes to this last line that Elliot said we would be waiting for. Elliot had told us that, there was one more verse that we were going to get to later, and now is the time that we have that verse. And it's Matthew chapter 5, verse 37. And it says this: all you need to simply say is yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Why does Jesus even throw this last sentence in there. Like, why is this last verse even a thing? You would think after this long discourse on just let your word be your word, that Jesus wouldn't have to say this. And I can just see him standing on this mountainside, just kind of putting his hand over his head and being like, guys, say what you mean and mean what you say. Say what you mean and mean what you say. It's the heart of what Jesus is getting at. And we look at the media, we look at Facebook, we look at friends, we look at all this stuff in our world, and we ask them to tell the truth. We ask them to be a reliable source. And my question for you is, do you do that? Are you that? Jesus is on a mountain asking us in this room, are we able to tell the truth? Are we able to live by our word? We're in a mini-series on Christian living, right? We've been talking about Christ living. We've been talking about reconciliation, sin, loving your enemies. Guess what? We can't do those things if our words can't be trusted. I don't know if you know this, but you're having to reconcile with people. You're having to love your enemies. You're having to restore your relationship with God because sin is broken, because we've broken trust, because we've decided to be mistrusting, to be people who have lied or done something wrong. That's why we've been talking about these big topics. It's why Jesus is talking about these big topics. They were relevant back then. They're relevant today. But like I said, reconciliation, loving your enemies, sin, those are the big ones. But I want to take a second to kind of cover two different types of lies before we dive into the end of this sermon. And so the first is like the little white lies, the ones that we referenced earlier that we wrote a VeggieTales episode about. And here's just a little truth about lies. It's every lie that you tell changes who you are and who you are becoming. Every lie that you tell changes who you are and who you are becoming. It doesn't matter how small it is. Even as kids growing up, the little lies that we told our parents changed the way that we had to talk and act around them to reinforce the lie, because the lie had to look like the truth. So every time we lie, it changes who we are and who we're becoming, because we have to change the way we talk and the way we act to reinforce that lie. And it's how those little things create a snowball that can make you into somebody you don't even know who you're looking at in the mirror. And then what about the lies that we tell to God? The ones like, I don't need you anymore. I can handle this by myself. You put me in this terrible situation. And the weird thing about lies that happen to God is it doesn't happen out here. The lies we tell to God, they're not public. And when we think of the word lie, we think it's this verbal action, right? And I even said, say what you mean and mean what you say. Like defining truth is saying something. But we say things with our actions. We say things with other things than our words. And our relationship with God and a lot of the things that we say to him happen right here, in our heart and in our mind. And I can't hold you guys accountable on that. Nobody can. Your friends can't hold you accountable on what you say to God often, because it's often in your heart. But I know where this mistrust comes from, and I know where the lies that we tell God come from, and it's what we talked about all last week. And that's sin. Sin has one job, and it does this job really, really well. Sin puts distance between you and God and then blames God for the distance. Sin puts distance between you and God and then blames God for the distance. God, you left me when I needed you. Right? Except I'm the one who, when times got tough, I stopped praying and I stopped reading my Bible. But God, you're the one that left me. God, you just stopped providing for me. But here I am, when I ran out of time, I cut church off the front. I cut my service off the front because that's the first things that I have time to sacrifice when I'm short. Or money got tight, so the tithe is the first thing to go. We stop providing for God but get mad at him because we think he's running away from us. Sin puts distance between you and God and then blames God on the distance. And what happens when sin enters our life, the way it's able to do this, it creates guilt and it creates shame. And we all know that feeling. It makes it very uncomfortable to come to God, to be in his presence. So we start avoiding him, right? That's where our prayer life starts to tumble away from God, and it's where we stop reading our Bible, and it's where the lies start with God, is in our sin. It's tough, but, it's true. The thing about lying is it's never a simple thing. Whether it's the little lies, the lies to God, the big lies, it's never simple. It never leads to a relaxing life. And Jesus is standing on this mountain because he knows what's happening. He's standing on this mountain because he knows the people in front of him aren't being truthful. Their word can't be trusted. He knows what's happening in our lives, but he also knows what's about to happen. Jesus knows who's going to get hung on a cross. He knows who's going to be put in a tomb and who's going to rise again. Jesus didn't come so that we could hide our sin in our shame. Jesus came so that we could have the opportunity to restore our relationship with God. And he's standing here going, if these people can't be honest with each other, if they can't be honest with their sacrifices, if they can't be honest with the priests they're talking to, how are they ever going to be honest with God when they enter into a personal relationship with him? And I don't know about y'all, but for me, it's a lot easier to come clean about stuff here on earth, to people here on earth, that I shouldn't be doing, than it is to come clean to God. Because of what we talked about last week, and Tim hit it perfectly. It's the blame game. Right here, I can say, well, I did that wrong because of culture, because of society, because of politics, because of the way I was raised, because of my parents, because of my financial situation, because of somebody else. Here, we always have somebody that we can blame. But Tim, he said it last week, when we get to heaven, it's just going to be us and God, and we're going to be accountable for our actions. And I better hope that Jesus' blood is covered over those actions, that I was able to reconcile that relationship. The foundation of our relationship with Jesus is trust and honesty. They survey dating websites to see what the top things people are looking for. And two of the top words that hit dating websites and what people are looking for are honesty and trust, because they're the foundation of every relationship that we're trying to build. And God's relationship is not excluded from that. It's why when we even dive into the very basics, when we talk about 5 steps of salvation, honesty is number 2, right? Hear and believe, and then we repent. It's coming to God, taking that 180, asking for forgiveness for all the junk in our lives. It's the time that we stand before God and admit the lies that we've been telling him, that we've been telling about ourselves for years. And then you get even step number 5 in the process, living your life for Christ. When we live our life for Christ, when we mess up, we still try to hide it. We still try to run from God. Jesus is standing on a mountain asking you, can you say what you mean and mean what you say? So how do we become people that start living in truth? How do we become someone whose words can be trusted? It starts right here. It starts in your heart, and it starts in your mind. In Matthew chapter 23, he's warning the Pharisees about all kinds of things. And in one of the warnings, he says this. He says, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will also become clean. First clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will also become clean. I don't know if you guys have realized this, but our culture is about appearances. It's all about appearances. We have to look perfect. We have all these face and skin treatments, and we work out way too much to be sculpted, and we post the best pictures we have of ourselves on Instagram and on Facebook, and none of that stuff is bad. But oftentimes, we walk around and we keep the exterior of who we are shiny. We keep the exterior of who we are clean, but the inside of who we are is rusted and broken and trashed. Where's your heart? Where is your mind? Are they healthy? Are you taken care of? I don't know if you know this, but during COVID-19, depression numbers have skyrocketed. They're up way higher than they've ever been before. Suicide is up way higher than they've ever been before. People's mental health is suffering, but we're walking around with smiles on our faces. We're walking around showing people that we're fine. We walk around keeping the outsides of our cup clean. It's time to clean the inside. It's time to start telling the truth. And it starts with approaching God with the truth about who you are and what you've done and who he is. Being true to God, being true to yourself. And normally, when we're up here preaching, whether it's Tim or Elliot or myself, we try to give you something to work on during the week. But today we're going to give you something to do right now. And it should carry on through the week. But it's going to start now. We're entering into a time of communion. And for those of you that are in the room, there's 6 communion stations around. You're going to be able in a couple minutes to get up and go get the, communion from around the room. If you're online with us, now would be a good time to kind of grab your communion elements. Turn up the volume. Don't miss anything. But we're entering into this time of communion where we get to reflect. And communion is this time where we remember the sacrifice that Christ made for us on the cross. And Christ didn't sacrifice his life for us so that we could run away. He didn't sacrifice his life so that we could hide what was going on. Christ died so that we could be forgiven. He died so that we could reconcile this relationship. You're about to have the opportunity to sit down and hold that bread that represents the body that was broken for you. To hold that juice that represents the blood that was spilled. And bring that guilt and that shame and the lies to God. And you might have shoved stuff way back in the file cabinets of your mind. You might have so much camouflage over these lies and this shame and this guilt that you might not know where to find it. But now's your chance to open it up, to uncover it, to clean the inside of your cup. Living the Christian life, the whole mini-series, its cornerstone is this message. Getting our hearts and our minds in a place to love and serve Jesus. And we all have a lie, whether it's in your past or it's right now. That signature sin, that lie. And at the beginning of the sermon, I asked you, what's yours? What's yours? Now's the time where you get to turn that lie into a truth. If you need to talk to someone or pray with someone, you can fill out one of those cards in the seat back in front of you, and we'll get with you later today or tomorrow. If you need to talk with somebody in person, I'll be up here in the front. I would love to talk and pray with you. If you're online or you just want to stay socially distanced or keep it private, you can connect with us anytime on our website or on Facebook. We would love to talk about this stuff with you. We love you. We're praying for you. We're in this together, in the good and in the bad. But it starts right now. There is no I'll do it later. So go ahead, take a moment right now, grab your communion elements, and have that honest discussion you need to have with God. You may do this now.